Hello, everyone. Topic of today's lecture is U.S. Congress. The main function of Congress is passing laws, and a law is the most important way in which public policy is implemented. Another important functions of Congress are listed here, but I think, in my view, the most important secondary function of Congress is oversight of executive branch. Congress can have investigations into executive branch, into president, and sometimes they can impeach and try to remove, impeach in the House and try to remove president in the Senate. Bicameralism is an idea that a legislative body should have two chambers. Comparatively speaking, usually countries which are federalist countries, they have two chambers in a legislative body. Two concepts to know about House of Representatives. One is gerrymandering, is an attempt to draw congressional districts in a way that helps a particular political party. Usually, state legislatures are in charge of redrawing maps, congressional maps in the House after census after 10 years. Another thing is a congressional apportionment, is a process in which a number of members of Congress in a particular state changes after census. There are a few kinds of powers to Congress: enumerated, implied, inherent. And they're different based on their relation to Constitution. Obviously, enumerated powers, the ones that are simply listed in Constitution, like one of the most important powers of Congress is power of the purse. Congress passes a budget. Important thing about, as I mentioned just before, power to pass a budget and power to raise revenues, to raise taxes. This is like an example of how revenues are structured in U.S. federal budget. You see that most money comes from individual income taxes. Second thing would be payroll taxes. You pay every time you get your pay stub, they're paid by your employer. And interesting note, corporate income taxes, 6%. It's a result of lobbying. Corporations, businesses, powerful in the United States. They're very well organized. They're able to have a tax law to their liking. This is why corporations pay only 6% in U.S. federal budget. Important power of Congress used to be declaring war, but since Truman started war in North Korea without consulting Congress, basically Congress gave up on that power. Nowadays, American presidents, they can start a war anytime they like. They don't need Congress for that. Differences between House and Senate. In House, members are elected every 2 years, and they have to follow their constituents closely. In Senate, senators are elected every 6 years, so they can afford to be less receptive to their constituents. Important concept to know, to understand about Congress campaign funding. And the most important thing is a ruling on Citizens United case by US Supreme Court. It basically allowed corporations or anybody to form super PACs, super political action committees, and they can give to those PACs unlimited amounts of money and influence elections. There are like small caveats. They cannot, they're not supposed to coordinate with a campaign, but what they do instead, they run issue ads. They basically saying, oh, like, you know, this issue, it's very important, and this particular approach to that issue is the right one. And obviously, on most issues, I would say, Democrats and Republicans are like really divided. So when you see a super PAC advocating, when you see an ad on YouTube or any social media advocating for a particular position, you probably could guess which side are they taking, Democratic or Republican. And these are the limits to campaign funds donations. But again, remember, these are only for PACs, political action committees. And since we now have, since 2010, super PACs, these are like less important. One thing to understand that incumbents, people who are already lawmakers, they know how campaign funding works, and they have an advantage over people who try to unseat them. And this is like a historical analysis. For the most part, incumbents get reelected historically, unless there is some kind of scandal or there is a so-called wave election, when there's some kind of crisis and country thinks that we need to change a political party in power. When you think about congressional elections, you think, oh, these are people elected from a particular state, if they are senators, or from like a district, if they are members of Congress. And you might think, oh, issues must be like local, relevant to a state or a particular congressional district. But in many cases, what we have is national congressional elections, which means that national issues dominate those elections. And usually it's like things about war or some kind of major economic crisis, stuff like this. They make congressional elections, which are supposed to be about like local issues, they make them national. These are like three different models of representation. And the thing to understand about these models is that people who run for office or people who execute an office, they like free to decide what kind of model of representation they're going to do. It's descriptive. Like political scientists did some analysis of lawmakers, and they saw that maybe we can group members of Congress into those three categories. Yeah, this is American Congress, male, white, and Christian. Congressional approval ratings, in comparison to other branches of government, they're usually lower, and they usually reflect inability of Congress to like pass legislation. They usually like gets very low when there's a government shutdown, stuff like this. Yeah, and as you can see, lately approval ratings of Congress been like quite low. There are different offices in the House. Speaker, the most important position, majority leader, minority leader, whips who like count votes. Difference between Senate and House is that in the Senate, basically the function of the like basically in Senate, Speaker is majority leader. There's a formal head of the Senate, which is vice president, but he or she shows up to work when they need to break a tie in a vote. Otherwise, vice presidents don't serve as president of the Senate. Speaker has a bunch of very important powers. They assign people to committees. They decide who will be chair of the committee. This is how they can maintain control of their members. A few different kinds of committees in Congress. For the most part, the most important are standing committees. They pass, approve legislation when it's introduced. You might hear about ad hoc committees created for specific purposes. An example would be January 6th committee, which investigated attempt by President Trump to instigate an insurrection. Conference committees, they happen when there's a difference between House and Senate version of a bill. These are basic stages, how bill becomes a law. Important thing is, important thing to understand, most bills, they can be introduced in the House and then passed in the Senate, or they can be introduced in the Senate and then passed into House and then signed by President. There's a difference, though. Laws about taxes, they can only originate in the House. You cannot propose a bill on taxes in the Senate. Again, like outline of how bill becomes a law. Since yeah, a few caveats to this like basic process: introduction, passing in the committee, then passing in the House on the floor. There are a couple of things. First one would be appropriation bills. Sometimes, in many cases, Congress does not pass all 12, I think, yeah, 12 appropriation bills by end of fiscal year, at the end of September. So in this case, what usually happens, they have like concurrent resolution, and sometime in December they pass omnibus bills, which like a single bill instead of 12 appropriation bills. Another thing is filibuster, threat in the Senate. It does not happen in the House. It cannot happen in the House. A threat in the Senate to continue debates, and as a result, and the way in which you can stop a debate in the Senate is to pass a resolution with 60 votes, and for the most part, no party has 60 votes. So filibuster is kind of protection of a minority party in the Senate. This way they can pass, they can block legislation. Though there's a way around this filibuster. It's called a budget reconciliation process. So through this process, you can pass a bill with simple majority, and this filibuster cannot happen. And by the way, Affordable Care Act was passed through this budget reconciliation process. So for like every rule, there's usually like a way around. Thank you very much.